Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So the month of November started with the Supreme Court telling Lindsey Graham in substance, enough with the appeals. Get your butt in that Georgia state grand jury and testify about Donald Trump's election crimes. And November ended with a sad batch of so-called oath keepers being convicted of seditious conspiracy for trying to violently stop the certification of Joe Biden's election win. So friends, we are making progress. Here's a short recap of the legal stories for the month that was November 2022. Lindsey loses. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So for this legal recap video, all I want to say is the month of October started with Donald Trump not being held accountable for any of his crimes. And the month of October ended with Donald Trump not being held accountable for any of his crimes. And after the midterms, that's got to change. Here is a short recap of the legal stories for the month that was October 2022. So Trump lackey Kash Patel has been granted immunity and ordered to testify to a federal grand jury about Donald Trump's classified documents crimes. But what happens next? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So head of the Oath Keepers, Elmer Stewart Rhodes, who's on trial for seditious conspiracy, among other charges for, trying to violently overthrow the government, took the witness stand in his own defense today. And boy, did the jurors get an earful. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So there's some new reporting out that the Department of Justice is thinking about whether there's a need to appoint a special counsel to begin investigating the crimes of Donald Trump. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So news broke recently about how Trump and company viewed Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas as their best shot at corruptly overturning the results of the 2020 presidential election. I mean, John Eastman, Lindsey Graham, Mark Meadows, Jeffrey Clark, Clarence Thomas, Ginny Thomas. Let's talk about the never-ending parade of Donald Trump's co-conspirators, because justice matters. So Elmer Stewart Rhodes, head of the Oath Keepers, on trial for seditious conspiracy, testified in his own defense today. And he went full Trump. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So Donald Trump just told us that he's got a big announcement to make. He's going to make it on November 15th. Everybody get ready. I think we know what's coming. But let's talk about why any announcement Donald Trump makes is not going to help him, because justice matters. So if the Republicans take control of the House of Representatives, can they stop the Department of Justice from investigating and ultimately prosecuting Donald Trump and his criminal associates? The answer is no. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Well, friends, we have another book to talk about. The memoirs of former Vice President Mike Pence. And based on some new reporting today, it looks like in his book, Mike Pence reveals that he chose to conceal some of the crimes of former President Donald Trump. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So Donald Trump has now alleged that he used the Department of Justice to help Ron DeSantis win the 2018 election for governor in Florida. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So there's some new reporting out that Attorney General Merrick Garland is getting close to making a prosecutorial decision about whether to charge Donald Trump. I know, friends, I know. We'll believe it when we see it. But let's talk about it, because justice matters. Well, friends, it's another day, so of course it's another bogus lawsuit filed by Donald Trump. This one is his obvious effort to try to run out the clock to avoid having to testify to the January 6th committee. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So Donald Trump was subpoenaed to appear before Congress today. He was supposed to testify to the January 6th committee about the insurrection, but he didn't. Instead, his crime spree just continues, unaddressed and unabated. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So let's look for some light on the justice horizon. I think we can find some, but we'll probably have to turn our eyes at this moment to the state of Georgia. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So Donald Trump announces yet another run for president. Well, at least this time around, it looks like mainstream media might just have his number. Oh, and by the way, this announcement that he's running for office will have zero impact on the pending criminal investigations. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So former Vice President Mike Pence has declared that he will not testify to the January 6th committee about the crimes of Donald Trump. Well, you know what, Mike? You may want to buckle up, because I have a feeling there's a whole nother kind of subpoena headed your way. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So, friends, we now have another special counsel appointed to investigate the crimes of Donald Trump. What does it mean, and where do we go from here? Let's talk about it, because justice matters. So, friends, we've had about 24 hours now to let sink in the reality that a special counsel will now be heading up the criminal investigation of Donald Trump. And I'm going to ask you to bear with me, because I want to talk about why this may actually prove to be a good development. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So, friends, we just learned about yet another leaked Supreme Court opinion. Another leaked Supreme Court opinion authored by Justice Alito. And now there's new reporting that the leaker may be Alito himself. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. It looks like an old investigation into Donald Trump might be rising from the dead. So, friends, lots of breaking legal stories today, and they're all good on the accountability front. You know, is it just me, or does it feel like maybe justice is pulling on its running shoes? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So, friends, Special Counsel Jack Smith carves up more than just the turkey on Thanksgiving Day. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So recently, Mike Pence uttered 7 words. 7 words that should forever disqualify him from holding public office. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So friends, did you see Kevin McCarthy's latest attempt at political bullying? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So, facing multiple criminal investigations, Donald Trump decides that a good strategy would be to attack the prosecutor's spouse. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So, friends, remember a few days ago when Mike Pence said he was, quote, closing the door on testifying about what happened on January 6th? Well, it looks like Special Counsel Jack Smith is preparing to kick that door wide open, right off the hinges. You know why? Because justice matters. So friends, Donald Trump just can't stop confessing to crimes. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So friends, a jury just returned guilty verdicts against all 5 defendants, members of the so-called Oath Keepers organization, for the crimes they committed at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. So today is a good day for the Republic, because justice matters. So we all know that a jury just convicted 5 Oath Keepers of trying to violently stop the certification of Joe Biden's presidential election win. And those convictions will have ripple effects. Who might get caught up in those ripples? Maybe Roger Stone, Alex Jones, Mike Flynn. Let's talk about that, because justice matters.
It's for sure. Justice matters. Justice matters. Justice matters.